Bonjour, aujourd'hui c'est le vendredi 12 mars, hein, le vendredi 12 mars. Joyeux vendredi. Ouais. Hein? So today I can talk about a vacation I took using the expression je suis allé. We've kind of been working on that. But then I really want to wrap up the activity we started yesterday on Canvas. And I want to have y'all start thinking about these expressions that trigger the passé composé or the preiterite. Um, OK, donc on va commencer avec un échauffement. Ensuite, mes vacances, la fin de cette activité sur Canvas. Et puis les expressions qui déclenchent le passé composé. Et enfin pour mardi. Donc pour l'échauffement, qu'est-ce que tu as fait hier soir? Qu'est-ce que tu as fait hier soir? Moi, hier soir, j'ai joué aux jeux vidéo. Moi, j'ai joué aux jeux vidéo. Hier soir, j'ai cuisiné des raviolis chinois. Jiaozi, jiaozi. Hier soir, j'ai cuisiné des raviolis chinois. Jiaozi or pot stickers. You may know them as pot stickers. Hier soir, Madame Punzol a regardé une série. Hier soir, Madame Punzol a regardé une série sur la télévision. Et toi, qu'est-ce que tu as fait hier soir? J'ai joué aux jeux vidéo, j'ai cuisiné des raviolis, elle a regardé. Et toi, qu'est-ce que tu as fait hier soir? So I'd love to go through. I'll go ahead and pause the recording. I'd love to go through and hear you tell me what you did last night. And I'd love to hear you try to say it in French. Okay, we're just trying. Donc, hier soir, j'ai. Hier soir, j'ai. Qu'est-ce que tu as fait? Ok, donc hier soir, j'ai joué aux jeux vidéo, j'ai cuisiné. Super, super. Donc, mes vacances. Nous avons commencé cette activité hier. Hier, nous avons commencé cette activité. Aujourd'hui, terminons cette activité. Donc aujourd'hui, terminez cette activité question 7 et question 8. Question 8, il y a plusieurs réponses exactes, plusieurs réponses valables. OK? Donc s'il vous plaît, prenez 2 minutes, 3 minutes à terminer cette activité. So let's take 2 or 3 minutes to finish this activity. A few people finished it and turned it in, which is great. If you aren't one of those people, take 2 or 3 minutes to finish it so that we can go over it. And I'll check in 2 or 3 minutes and ask you to use a reaction if you need more time. Okay, bien. So most of you turned it in, so let's go ahead and go through it. So these two texts are taking place in the past tense, the preiterite. And the preiterite is, in French, it's called the passé composé. In French, it's called the passé composé, and I'll write that in the chat so you can see what it looks like. Le passé composé. And that's a term that we use to talk about the past, le passé composé, the composed past. So this is the preiterite in English. And I asked you to find 2 or more examples. So go ahead and plug in one example in the chat that you found. Ok, bien. Nous avons vu quelques réponses. J'ai plutôt aimé, j'ai fait, nous avons fait, nous sommes allés, etc. Ce sont de bonnes réponses. Ce sont de bonnes réponses, ok? Ça, c'est le passé composé que nous voyons maintenant depuis quelques jours. Et ici, maintenant que vous avez lu le texte 3, 4 fois, qu'est-ce qui se passe avec ces verbes? And this is a question that will really help inform us later on when we start learning other tenses in French. And I want to kind of give it to you now to kind of set the ground for it, set the foundation for that. So what kind of situations are we seeing happen in these texts? Which ones did you check? And maybe you can speak up out loud if you'd like, or you can put the situation in the chat, the checkbox that you hit, and I'll give you the correct answer. Yeah, so we're not seeing habits in these texts. We're not seeing habits or descriptions of the scenery or the weather or even emotions so much. And that's important because the passé composé in French, the preiterite is used for actions, specific actions that happen at a specific time. Okay? And that's what we're going to learn. That's what we've been learning the past few days and that you're getting more and more familiar with as we do these activities. Awesome. So if you haven't already, please spend some time this weekend working on that as homework and submitting it. And I'd love to see now, what are some patterns you've noticed with the verbs in these texts? So here are some examples of the verbs that we're looking at. And these are examples. These aren't all the examples. There are more examples. But these are the examples that I really wanted to focus on in this text. Do you see any patterns here? What are things that you're seeing that's similar or seem to follow some kind of pattern? Ok, très bien. Oui, donc nous avons vu, nous avons visité, nous sommes restés, nous avons nagé, nous avons pêché. So a few people noticed some patterns with nous. We're using nous, so that's the subject. So it's all about we are doing this, we're doing that, or we were, I should say. And some people noticed that a lot of them are ending with e, with the accent at the end, and that's really great. Yes, yes, a lot of them are ending with e. That's a good pattern to identify. And I wanted to bring up this pattern. Nous avons vu, nous avons visité. What does that mean, nous avons? Do y'all know? And I gave you a little hint. What are we looking at there? That's okay. We'll keep working with this. What we're seeing here is avoir and être. There's one example with être, but most of them are with avoir. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I just wanted to get you thinking about that. Okay, and then the other pattern that y'all noticed, these last things. Can you guess what these words in orange mean? Excellent, yeah. So one person was able to identify what some of these were. Visiter, nous avons visité. Oh, to visit, okay. So we visited. Nager, someone was able to say, oh yeah, that's swimming. So we swam. Okay, we saw, we visited, we stayed, we swam, we fished. You don't know the verb pêcher. Pêche can mean peach. Yeah, pêcher is a weird thing. Pêcher is a weird word in French where it can mean a lot of different things if you spell it just a little bit differently. I'm glad somebody brought that up. Péché with those accents means a sin. Une pêche, peach. I believe it's with that accent. It could be with this accent. I'd have to look it up to remind myself because I get it confused. I'm not sure which accent it is. Somebody wants to find that out. And then pêcher is to fish. It's kind of weird. So just to, and that's a really great thing that I'm glad somebody noticed that. But yeah, pêche it can mean a peach, to sin, or to fish. So it can mean a lot of different things. It's really weird. It's one of those reasons why accents can matter a lot sometimes in French. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to show you, okay, so here we've got nous avons vu, we saw, nous avons visité, we visited. Nous sommes restés, nous avons nagé, nous avons pêché. So for those of you who noticed that pattern of the E with the accent at the end, the E at the accent at the end, where do you think that pattern's coming from? Why do you think we're doing that?
Why are we changing visiter into visiter? Sounds the exact same. Sounds the exact same, but it's written very differently. Why do you think we're changing that? For the past tense, yes. For the passé composé, exactly. Awesome. Okay, so we'll look at this a little bit differently, a little bit more next week. But let's look at some of these expressions. Les expressions qui déclenchent le passé composé. So in the text, I asked you, when is this happening? Right? I asked you to read text A and text B, and I said, well, when is this happening? And you were able to guess. I remember somebody guessed, oh, avant means before. Avant la pandémie, oh, it's probably pre-pandemic. Yeah. And somebody else, l'été dernier is the other text, text B. L'été dernier, somebody guessed, okay, l'été, été. And finally we figured out, okay, it's last summer. So let's take a look at some examples of sentences in the passé composé. Avant la pandémie, ma mère est allée au Japon. Avant la pandémie, nous avons étudié au lycée. Hein, vous vous rappelez, en 2020, vous avez étudié au lycée. Avant la pandémie, j'ai dîné au restaurant. Nous ne dînons pas maintenant au restaurant. Non. Donc, avant la pandémie, j'ai dîné au restaurant. L'été dernier, Madame Panzel a fait un pique-nique. L'été dernier, Madame Panzel a beaucoup travaillé au jardin. Et l'été dernier, je ne sais pas, elles ont nagé au lac. Elles ont nagé au lac. Hier, tu as lu un texte en français. Tu as lu 2 textes en français hier. Tu as lu 2 textes en français hier. Hier, vous avez dit au revoir. Hier, vous avez mangé peut-être un sandwich au déjeuner. Je ne sais pas, peut-être. Peut-être vous avez mangé une salade au déjeuner. Je ne sais pas. Il y a un an, nous avons voyagé en avion. Il y a un an, donc avant la pandémie, nous avons voyagé. Il y a un an, j'ai pensé que la pandémie allait durer 6 mois environ. Non. Un an et demi. Il y a 2 ans, vous avez commencé les études de français. Il y a 2 ans, vous avez commencé les études en français. Hein? OK. So, avant la pandémie, l'été dernier, hier, il y a un an, il y a 2 ans. Can somebody break down what these mean and maybe why we're using the passé composé with that? Excellent. Good work. Il y a un an, 1 year ago. So you know the expression il y a, there is, there are. But when you follow it up with a time, il y a un an. Il y a une heure. Il y a une heure, nous avons commencé le cours. Il y a une heure environ, nous avons commencé la classe de français. About an hour ago, we started French class. Il y a un an, a year ago. So, il y a still means there is, there are. That's not changing. But il y a is this really great expression in French. If you follow it with a time, it means ago. So, ago. Il y a un an, a year ago. Somebody noticed that hier, oops, hier meant yesterday. L'été dernier, last summer. All these expressions, less so this first expression, but all these expressions are going to trigger, déclencher, trigger the passé composé, the preiterite, okay? Toutes ces expressions vont déclencher le passé composé. All these expressions will trigger the preiterite, the past, because they're talking about a specific time in the past. And more or less specific, right? Yesterday, 1 year ago, last summer, a pretty specific time in the past. Okay, and those are all going to trigger the passé composé or the preiterite. Somebody asked if you're allowed to retake the quiz. Yes, and it's called a quiz in Canvas, but it's really just a practice activity. This is a more substantial practice activity where I asked you to read a couple texts and think about them a little bit, answer some questions, but it's still a practice activity. And you can retake it as many times as you like. Have fun. It's probably not very interesting the third or fourth time. But yes, please retake it if you'd like. Yes, of course. OK, pour mardi, for Tuesday. Pour mardi, termine une de ces phrases. Avant la pandémie, l'été dernier, hier, il y a un an. I'm going to plug this into Canvas as an assignment for Tuesday. So this will be part of your asynchronous lesson on Monday. For Tuesday, finish one of these sentences. If you want, finish all of them. You can go above and beyond. I will not stop you. Termine une de ces phrases en français. In French, try finishing one of these sentences. Use the lessons, the notes that you have from today. You can watch this lesson on YouTube. Use these lessons and think and try to figure out, okay, how do I want to finish the sentence? L'été dernier, hier, il y a un an. Try to complete one of those sentences or more in French, all right? Because we're going to practice the passé composé. And again, I'm really excited for y'all to be learning this. Once again, I'll repeat what I said yesterday. I am not expecting you to master it. All I want is for you to be able to recognize it and maybe use it a little bit. All right? But I'm just very excited, so I'm giving you lots of practice. I'll stick around if there are questions. Otherwise, I will say au revoir et bon week-end.